So we are with the public meeting 5 of the AI General Assembly first session 2020. We will today discuss the agenda number 3. The agenda number 3 is assessing the scope, liability, and interpretability of the parallel nature of AI codes in corporeal entities. Uh, to go ahead with the session, we need to take the attendance of all the delegates as soon as possible. So, yes, yes. So, in order to take the attendance, I would request the president to please take the names and then we will note down the same. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Good morning, delegates. We'll start with Anurati.
Good morning, sir. Present and voting.
Thank you. Kashvi. Kashvi. Okay, we'll come back on to that. Mridutpal.
Present and voting, sir.
Thank you. Prakar.
Present and voting, sir.
Thank you. Samar.
Present and voting.
And we have Taying.
Present and voting.
Okay, and we also have the vote of Kashvi.
Yes, registered. Frantic will join in a while, so let me confirm. Um, no issues, you can try rejoining in that case. It's cooperatively okay. Okay. Sanad is also present voting, if I'm correct, right, Sanad?
Yes,
Sanad is
sir.
not here? Okay, yes, he's there. Yeah. Wonderful. Okay, fine. Fair enough. Thank you. Everybody's registered then. So let's go ahead then. Sanad, you can table your motion if possible, and then we can just pass for a vote as soon as possible. Yeah. Okay. So the motion tabled by Sanad, which was accepted, was that uh, Agenda 3.1, which is nature of data usage and transporter considerations, must be discussed by the delegates. Those who are in favor, please vote aye on the Google Meet chat. Everybody has to vote. Nobody can exempt. Those who are not in favor, please vote no. Those who are in favor of Agenda 3.1, please vote ayes. Yes. Those who are not, please vote noes. Thank you. It's already a majority. Noes. Minus to one. Okay. Finally, 6 is to 1. We saw no's after so much time. I must say. This is democracy. 3 to 5, 6. Okay, 6 is to 1. Majority. Not absolute, but special majority. The motion is hereby passed. We shall now go ahead with Agenda 3.1. Each of the speakers will get 5 minutes for the same. Just give us some. Kshitish, can you use the timer if possible?
Sure, please give me a minute.
Yeah, sure.
I hope the timer is visible now.
Okay, so the first speaker in the order will begin now. Um, the first speaker in the order is Anurati. Anurati, you have 5 minutes. Thank you. Shitish, please monitor from here in, okay? And take points of information as well. Thank you.
Good morning. Um, am I clearly audible?
Perfectly audible. Please start the timer, Shitish.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Um, Talking about the nature of data usage and the transborder considerations, I think it is very important to first start with the fact that transborder data flows is is something which is very important, and at the same time is a is a very strong way of nations being able to distribute data and communicate between them. Data should not be constrained by the national borders. But what is needed is a strong, innovative privacy regimes that protect the trade growth. It is the legal protection of these privacy on a global level scale developed with the human rights instruments such as the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948 and the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights of 1966. Now, the OECD, which is another important regulations, was the first to take the attempt to deal with the transborder data flows, and it can be clearly recognized that they recognize the economic and social benefits of the transborder data flows. Some of them being that uh, the transborder data flows allows for businesses and consumers to access the available technology services. Also, it helps with the use of information and communication technologies which operate via internet and rely on the transborder data flows. Which is key to the infrastructure for efficient industries and the critical productivity. Um, However, what is necessary is that we have in place strict and bold privacy regimes which help protect the uh, personal data thus shared. It is important to know that a one fits all mindset which is not going to work. The initiatives should focus on developing flexible privacy protection regulations that can coexist and adapt to technological advances. If we look at restrictions when it comes to transborder data, they can be categorized as data localization and also privacy regimes. So data localization requirements have an effect of decreasing data security. If we take about in the business point of view, which they force companies to maintain local data centers, which frequently results in the establishment of minimally resourced facilities that are more likely to permit network intrusions and data compromises. Also, the compliance costs get passed on to the consumers, and in such situations the smaller businesses do not prevail and are not able to keep up with such costs. When it comes to privacy regimes, yes, we have to have, as I said, strict and not rigid policies in place. um, Policies and the standards must be technically efficient, they must be economical, must be financially sound, they must be legally justifiable, ethically consistent, and must obviously be socially accepted. Uh, there are there are we can there are a lot of already in place regulations like the OECD and the DPDOs, and these should be taken into consideration and should be applied on a global level, uh, making sure that the privacy is our priority, but not at the cost or be the enemy of prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Anurati. You had 53 seconds left. Any point of information from anyone? Okay, Shetty, you can speak next, please.
Am I audible now?
Yes,
Hello.
Kashmir, you are. Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So, firstly, talking about such nature of the data usage and transporter considerations, when we deal with corporate entities, these entities, a lot of them do like function at a global level. Now, why do transporter considerations become so important for us today? Considering that there is data portability that has come up, it has made transfer of data, usage of data much more easier, much more convenient to use this data at a global scale. But also at the same time, what problem does this have is that it creates as much challenges as there are benefits to such an approach. So, what essentially happens then with such data is that when entities have to deal with it, it is their personal interests versus the public interests of like privacy and retaining the data for ethical concerns. So entities, whether government or non-government, would have profit intentions, and how then would their economic interests be catered when at the same time they have to ethically comply with human interest, human dignity. So one of a fair model for a lot of entities is that companies, businesses, they work on like a model. They sell or exploit data. So as we know, like a lot of companies are there, offer free services for customers. So how do they function? Customers are lured by these free services, but at the end of the day, their data is actually traded for such free services. Now, if a company does consider that such a model of trading data is ethical, so then where do we draw a line? Definitely, there are companies that target market advertising, and they do this as a business. But then, wouldn't their ethical concerns be at a level which is higher compared to, because of such data usage? This could be personally identified data or even non-personal data. Now, when talking about personally identifiable data, there are entities could have different approaches on personally identifiable data. Now, as we know, with GDPR coming in and other data protection laws, nations have their own legislations on data protection and their own definitions for personal data. But at the same time, entities like Microsoft or Google, they consider according to how their sector is the degree of variability that will be in this personal identifiable data. Now, what happens in this case, that when they explain such personal identifiable data in a different manner, the scale of exposure or the scale of accountability varies. So a lot of the Fortune 500 companies actually have this practice by which, though at the face of it, they will portray that they are being ethical, they are actually providing all the terms and services and all the ways that they are functioning. But at the end of the day, they're just using a loophole to kind of meet their interests. So at this point of time, expecting a voluntary commitment from these from corporate entities would be something that I feel would be idealistic. But we do have to, on the other hand, depend on the rules and regulations that are in place. So, taking into consideration India having coming up with its personal data protection bill almost recently, in 2019 they had an amendment of that bill, and they came up with two very specific and important provisions. Firstly, privacy by design framework, and secondly, the sandbox regulations. So the privacy by design framework basically calls for people who are using data, operators of data, to function their model in such a way that privacy is the key concern while using any form of personal data. Now, this is definitely a very positive step, and it's something that is needed. It's just like an ethics and design framework that entities will have to develop, such algorithms or such AI use where they are inevitably giving that focus on privacy. Secondly, the sandbox regulations where AI models are tested or AI tools that are used are going to be tested. Now, what the provision in this is that there are certain data exemptions that are provided for such sandbox companies. Obviously, the government has done this to give incentives so that there is more AI development. But at the same time, we have to see that these AI models require a lot of data, and there has to be certain data guidelines for these entities to govern such data, such, in sandboxes, because ideally sandboxes should be the place where assessment should happen. They should have trial and error in a more regulated space, so that when the actual model is there, it is much more safer and it's much more ethical in nature. So yeah, that would be my position on this sub agenda. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Ms. Kashri. Any questions or any point of information? Okay, all right. Uh, Mr. Mridpal Bhattacharya, you can speak next, please.
All right, thank you. First of all, good morning to all of you. I'd like to start off by saying that in the past decades, the development of more sophisticated telecommunication systems, coupled with the growth in computing, has resulted in a growing international trade in information and communication. Now, a trans-border data flow is the transfer of data across a national border by any one of a variety of media. Such data would normally be stored or reprocessed in a country other than the originating country. Now, the range of information involved in TDFs is vast. For example, 27,000 messages involved in the reservation of a single 747 flight. American Express uses transnational data flow daily for over a million credit card transactions. And SWIFT, the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunications, provides electronic funds transfer between around 1,200 banks in 50 countries. According to a study undertaken in the US on the use of transborder data flows by multinational corporations, operations in the following areas have become largely dependent on such transfers, such as production planning, coordination systems, including production scheduling, material management, and inventory record keeping, financial systems, including budget performances and accounting statements, engineering systems, including large mathematical models and specialized computer equipment, purchasing computer systems, customer systems, including accounts payable and receivable, historical profiles of vendors, employee systems, including payroll and human resources planning. Now, the US National Committee of the International Institute of Communications in 1982 stated all these factors, and in 1983, further, the OECD uh, took on a survey to ascertain the impact that TDFs have on a company's operation. Now, they said, and I quote, that the operations were crucial to managing international operations is the availability of accurate and timely information with the flow of information paralleling the increasing flow of goods and services. From basic design and research through production, marketing, and distribution to after sales services, TDF has been used to reduce costs and increase productivity. In some cases, the improvements in performance allowed by TDF is so great as to make it possible for the firm to reorganize its operating structure in a more efficient way. TDF allows firms to offer entirely new products. The improved information flows made possible by TDF broaden and deepen the world market and make it increasingly interdependent. The communications network takes on the aspect of a nervous system, both for international firms and for the world economy in general. Telecommunication policy is going to have an increasing impact on the behavior of MNEs and therefore the development of world trade and and foreign investment. The OECD stated these. Now, based on these, it is imperative to understand that uh, TDF is something that is needed. Perhaps it might as well be source for data leaks. Like there are intercompany informational transfers. There are intercompany informational transfers. Now, when transfers are being made intra-company between the company itself, like suppose from one branch office to another branch office, it is not much of a concern. But I think when intercompany transfers are being made, it might as well be a concern because there are personal identifiable data concerned here. And then there are governmental information needs. That is when a certain company is subpoenaed for a reason, and they have to provide documents for discovery. Now there lies a problem, especially in case of countries which are, let's say, corrupt. Like these factors have to be kept in mind, and these factors have to be studied upon. The policies of TDF have to be looked into thoroughly. And far as the ethics are concerned, I think there is high time for a revival and revamp in the whole ethics background. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Mr. Mridpal Bhattacharya. If any of you have information or questions for Mridpal, please. Okay, all right. In this, Mr. Prakash, you can speak next, please.
Hello, everybody. A very good morning to all of you. Mm, so we are talking about nature of data uses and trans-border consideration. So I would mostly focus on the Indian aspect. So the importance of global data flow has been recognized by globally by various global organizations like European Commission, etc. and uh, and the next generation devices and next generation services requires seamless data transfer and data flow in a real time across the globe. For example, Google Glasses or driverless car. So it is imperative to have data transfer across the globe. The free flow for with respect to India, free flow of data will amount to 200% growth in virtual goods and services through e-commerce and growth of digital economy by 2030, which is around 58 billion right now, which may increase, which might increase, which is expected to increase to around 200 billion dollar. It will also help SMEs to digitally engage with global supply chain. Uh, However, the recent Puttaswamy judgment on privacy issues, as well as the debate across Cambridge Analytica Facebook incident, all these have made imperative to think about data localization and privacy issues. Practically, we don't have the right to be forgotten, as mentioned in GDPR, but it seems coming in India as well after this Puttaswamy privacy judgment. And in the backdrop of all these incidents, RBI uh, released an regulation that all the payment data of Indian customers should be saved in India, which was vehemently opposed by global financial service providers. Um, there is also a draft bill which was stable, known as Personal Data Protection Bill 2019, which was the outcome of Sri Krishna Committee report. Kashvi already mentioned about the privacy by design and sandbox framework. I would like to mention Section 40 of the bill, which restricts the cross-border transfer of personal data. The first and second subsections states that every data should be stored in India, and if not, at least a copy of it shall be stored in India. And the other subsection mentioned that central government needs to notify the category of personal data, and only that should be stored only in servers in India. So these are the steps being taken by the government. But there is an issue. There are challenges regarding the data localization. First of all, there will be huge cost of servers and infrastructure, which the company will have to invest by creating a local server. and it might be possible that only the large players are able to afford this, and ultimately customers will have to bear the cost of these infrastructures. Also, the foreign startups which are willing to invest in India might face the financial crunch because they will have to establish all the infrastructure in India as a prerequisite, and they might avoid coming in India. Second is, we are talking about data localization, which seems that if the data is stored locally, it will be more secure. But that is not the case. It is not. If the global standard is still not used, if the best possible security measures are still not used, even if the server are placed in local jurisdiction of any country, it is still open to vulnerability, and therefore. It should not be seen that data localization is the only way forward to restrict this data leakages. Also, many of the times we are comparing India with the countries like China and India, or China and Russia. China is more like a developed country in the field as far as technologies are concerned, and India is far behind China, and therefore direct comparison is not it should not be done, and India should look at its own constraints and thus take steps accordingly. Solution might be, rather than localizing the data, we should be open for free flow of data, and strong security and privacy measures should be taken, and not the protectionism shall be exercised. uh, that's my point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Prakash. Anybody has any questions or point of information for Mr. Prakash, please? Okay. Mr. Prantik Mukherjee, you can speak next.
Thank you, Sudhir. So, when we were talking about nature of data usage and cross-border consideration, so you have to understand that in a
Mr. Mukherjee, sorry to Mr. Mukherjee, hello. Yeah, Mr.
yeah,
Mukherjee, sorry to interrupt. If you could be a little louder, please.
yeah. What I couldn't get you, like voice is cracking up.
If you could be a little louder, please.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah. So when we are talking about the nature of data and cross-border consideration, so first of all, you have to understand like which type of data are we talking about. So here, like the sensitive personal data, critical personal data, and and we even to some extent and non-personal data also. So like talking about like from an international perspective, like GDPR has done quite a gave a like a way forward for the for other data protection uh, other data protection laws to be inculcated in other countries. But but what like majority countries are lacking right now is that which like the major countries which are lacking about right now is that they're not able to like define some of the things which which are like quite existing and which are quite important to, right. Recently if we talk about India, so India brought out this non-personal data thing, personal data recommendation. So like if we go through that, so we find that there are a lot of flaws in that paper, in that white paper altogether. So the main problem that they haven't done quite a lot of recommend, like they didn't do a well researched thought out well thought out and researched white paper, and it lacked a lot of consultations and all. like even many experts said that uh, they haven't like very much like had a talk had a like a got a recommend like got a consultation with the Competition Commission of India, and it actually has made quite a flaw in it. So when we have if we aren't able to define the nature of data and what we have and how much government interference will be there, so it will automatically lead to a lot of disturbance in the transporter flow of data too. So like in our first session when we talked about the internet and all, I already mentioned that if that cross-border flow of data is very much important for the perspective of globalization, for the perspective of globalization. And if it doesn't happen and if the internet is too much restricted worldwide, then automatically the concept of the internet, which I'm not in a very I'm not very much in support of, might be a reality, and it might give put us in a lot of problems. And so so why when we are bringing up this when you are bringing up this globalization policy and defining the nature of data and all, so we have to first of all understand that 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 how much how much data should be data should be uh, how much data should be regulated, and how much of it should be transferred to uh, allowed for cross border flow. And it will it will actually very much helpful for the and it will actually foster the growth of globalization. And if we talk about from other jurisdictions also, uh, like if we talk about California Consumer Privacy Act, they do have they do have some they are quite much transparent about their act, and they have even special provisions for small and medium scale industries too. And they have allowed for the cross border flow of data of some of the some of the like some of the some of the data which is actually needed for companies which are actually located in multiple locations in inside or outside the US. So these kind of things should be there which is like India. I think India can implement too, and I guess it will be very much helpful for India to learn from other jurisdictions, and they might end up having a uh, proper guideline for cross-border flow of data, and defining each the nature of data and type of data, each nature of data and type of data, so that there isn't be any confusion, and and the data structure can be maintained as well. Thank you.
All right. Anybody has any questions for Mr. Prantik Mukherjee or any point of information? All right, thank you. Mr. Samar, you speak next, please.
Oh, okay. Am I audible? Hello.
Yes, Samar, you are.
Yes. So, firstly, we need to understand how it began, how the data, like we are discussing nature of the data in cross-border. So, firstly, we need to understand where it all began. So, if we go back to 1970s, ARPANET, which was introduced by US Army for the first time. After that, actually it only used for the military information, right? Now later on, after that, it has been used by the eBay, which actually revolutionized the industry all over the world, because it actually changed the market. There's something called the idea of e-commerce that come into the pictures, right? Therefore, after that, various industries all over the globe are transforming themselves. Therefore, it leads to the globalization, economic growth all over the industries. Now understand this. Data is what? Data is simple. It's simple a packet of information which can be saved in various formats around the internet universe. Now the data can be used as a sword and can be used as a shield by in various aspects. Firstly, so I want to give an example. So in 1989, the KGB archives has Microvian archives has been released by the Russia to the US. So that leads to the hindrance of a sovereignty. Like it is a matter of national security. So just imagine in the similar scenario. It was a book that has been released during that point in time. Now consider the similar scenario 20 years now in 2020. What if there's a internet data file which has been secret file which has been released on internet? So data is very sensitive. Therefore, the cross-border rules are important because if such data can be released, it actually hinder the security, national security of a country. Similarly, now understand in terms of the commercialization of the industries all over the globe. What if there are certain piece of information of various high corporates which can be released in the market which they don't want to release? It can actually, you know, uh, leads to the fall down of that particular industry altogether. Therefore, data can should be regularized all over. That's why GDPR came in EU. That's why there was a internet trade policy for the internet separately, which came into the picture. So data actually helped us. So nature of data can be understand that it can be used in a positive way as well as negative way. Data can be used for the cyber security and cyber crime, how to locate various other kinds of format. But it has to be regulated accordingly because it can be misused by the different entities all over the globe. Actually, in I think a few years back, there was ISIS threat, which were like they have connected IDs in India and spreading the hatism in the India. I think so. The regulation, so that's why border of data is very sensitive and it should be regulated accordingly. That's what I have to say. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Mr. Mukherjee. So thank you for that, Samar. Mr. Sanat Arora can speak next, please.
However, if there is any point of information amidst, that can be taken into consideration. Any point of information? No. Yes, Anand, go ahead. You have 5 minutes from now.
Well, I'd like to start with the quote that whatever is legal is not generally ethical. The use of AI in corporate entities has become all the more prevalent with the advent of machine learning. Ever since the corporates have learned how to process our data has become something from a mere packet of knowledge to a currency. This means that a chunk of AI software is responsible for conducting day-to-day financial activities for some big companies in the industry. This means that there is a need to there's a need that arises for a larger role of ethics and liability in such circumstances. I would argue that data should be regulated. The data should be governed in the same way as stated in the Four Principles by Richard Stallman. Basically, the we should know how our data is being used. We should know what is the code behind the software so that we can figure out whether our data is being used in an ethical way or not. There's this author, his name is Frank Pascal. He wrote this book, it's called The Black Box Society. In his book, the Black Box Society refers the companies are being referred as the Black Box Society because whatever data algorithms which they employ to process our data, they are away from public scrutiny. We don't know what they're doing to them. We don't know how they're processing them. We don't know whether they're selling it to other companies or not. in accordance with Richard Stallman's principles of internet freedom, I'd like to argue that such use of data should be made known to public and should be public knowledge. Uh, when it comes to the governance of transported data, I'd like to argue for the four C's, which are consent, clarity, consistency, and control. I believe that the consumer who owns the data should have consent whether his or her data should be located in a different country or not. He should have the clarity whether to what use this data would be put up to. Uh, and basically, what I'm trying to say is that we should treat the data of others like we would like our data to be treated. Uh, AI has many complexities, and AI has undergone through many complexities and rapid advances in many fields. Companies ought to develop checklists, and there should be an open source where how the companies are managing the data is known to public, and essentially an organization like a regulatory organization like the FDA could be set up, which would uh, which would verify whether the company's algorithms are ethical or not. uh, EU, which has been an advocate for ethical data management, should come up, and it should promote ethical data practices by giving financial incentives or imposing financial sanctions if a company is not managing the data in ethical ways. The ethics and compliance professionals, they need to have a new set of skills that includes sophisticated understanding of AI and machine learning. They must be able to understand how AI is developed and deployed. The ethics professional must be technologically and AI savvy. Uh, Basically, what I'm trying to say is that uh, when AI is deployed to manage or process data, that should be available on the company's public forum, so that the government and the people and the stakeholders in that company could analyze how the data is being used in real time basis. Basically, I'd argue for more transparency, more public oversight when it comes to the governance of cross border data transfers. I'd like to end it here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sanad. So let us go to Shruti, but before that, any point of information to Sanad? Yeah. Okay. No point of information. Shruti, you have 5 minutes. Go ahead. Thank you.
So, is it okay if I speak from the next topic?
Okay, for the next agenda, you can. No issues. Thank you.
Okay. So,
Um,
can you just tell me which agenda is going on right now?
right.
Sub agenda.
Correct. So the sub agenda is this: nature of data usage and transport considerations. It is within third agenda, AI
Okay.
ethics boards.
Okay, sir. So, I'll go with the next sub agenda. Is it fine?
Yeah, in the future sub agendas, perfectly fine.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir.
So yeah. Time you have 5 minutes. Yeah, you wish to speak?
Yeah, yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, thank you. Good morning. So, we are currently witnessing major changes to the regulation of privacy. We can see in Europe and North America as well as Asia Pacific regions. One of the most complex and controversial aspect of any regulatory schemes addressing privacy, and more specifically the subsections of privacy law known as data protection. It is the regulation of cross-border data flows. Such regulation has become a become all the more complex in our interconnected world. After providing necessary background observations regarding issues surrounding the regulation of cross-border data flows on the internet, it's very high time the data cross-border is regulating in negative sense in illegal ways. So, in the history of the regulation transport data flows, is derived from number of distinct legal traditions and cultures, depending on the originating country or regions. For example, some regional legal instruments that are Council of European Conventions, the European Convention on Human Rights, and Charter of Fundamental Rights of Human European Union view data protection as fundamental rights. Other instruments may be not be based on human rights laws, may not be legally binding. For example, a scan of APEC's privacy framework reveals that the terms fundamental rights and human rights are not used at all in documents. And the purpose of the framework is defined term as realizing the benefits of electronic e-commerce. So basically, there are some issues in terms of geographical-based approach aims to protect against risks posed by the country or location to which the data are to be transferred, while the organizations-based approach targets risks posed by the organizations which receives the data. So in other terms, the compliance in practice, there are significant difference in the mechanisms required under data protection and privacy law provide to legal basis for transporter data flows. So in some cases, the preventing consequences of national data protection privacy laws, perhaps the most frequent cited motivations for regulation of transporter data flows has been avoid circumventions on national protection law. So guarding against the data processing risks in other countries, in some cases, transporter data flows regulation has been enacted because of some concerned data processing risks in other countries also. And difficulties in ascertaining data protection and privacy rights abroad. The difficulty of asserting data protection rights outside the country of export has been cited as an important policy, rationalized underlining the regulation of transporter data flows. So, in terms of the privacy and the data protection law, there must be a regulations. I agree with the Samar Rajput. He remarks the some points. There should be regulations of data protection law in terms of transporter, but there should be no transparency in the governments. But some way there should be regulation in the legal way. But we in future there will be a legally way they can do legal way in either legal way. So there must be a regulation in terms of transport or data protection. So I will end up this session, this remark. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, any point of information to Tai's statement? No? No point of information. We have discussed the sub agenda. Now, some delegates have requested that where is the sheet, so I'm sharing that in a minute. So, give me 1 minute. We have to actually make those codes, so it takes time, but we will do it right now. Okay, if any delegate is interested to propose a draft resolution on this, yes, they can do. So let me know if you wish to. What I'll do is I'll just share you an alternative document with the particular sign or number, and then we will register it as a draft resolution. Okay, so you can also produce draft resolutions as well in the assembly. You know, for example, that's also the thing. Yes, in the end of the conference, Once all the reports will be present again, which is tomorrow, one draft resolution has to be passed by the General Assembly with regards to what decisions have been taken by us. And this will be taken into consideration in two formats. First, the four reports. So tomorrow the reports have to be done earlier, and that will be the simplest way possible. At the same time, you have to draft a resolution, one joint resolution by all the members, which has to come, which is not a report. It's a resolution, so you have to get on direct suggestions. If you wish to understand how a resolution is written, you can go to the United Nations website and understand how Security Council and General Assembly resolutions are written, and then you can go ahead with it. So I'm sharing the draft with you. Just 1 minute. Yeah, yeah, added your PV, Krantik. Um, added your PV. Yeah, no worries. Okay, so here you go. Here is the document. I'm sharing it right now. So kindly refer to the chat. Please find the link. This is for draft report number 3 for third agenda. Also, discuss among yourselves for the presentations. Anyways, so now you can make your pointers out there and you can commit your writing. Okay. Authors must be mentioned. Everything must be mentioned as it was yesterday. It was done in the reasonable way. It should be done in the reasonable way. Okay. So let's go ahead. Now we have another agenda to discuss. So let us get into that. I'm sharing the screen for convenience so that you can see what else we have to do. Kshitij, can you track where is Mr. Sanjay? Maybe he had some network issues.
Sure, I'll get in touch with them.
Okay, I await. Okay. If you can see the left agendas, we have to discuss only 3 sub agendas, by the way. So those who are interested to discuss the sub agendas, please propose a motion to discuss the sub agendas. And yes, you have to justify as to why.
I I think we should go with the explainability of artificial intelligence because I think we should deal with that before getting much in depth into the other like legal entity, juristic entity thing, or the philosophical and cultural differences.
Okay. Please propose a motion, table a motion, Vidutpal.
I thus propose a motion to discuss the explainability of artificial intelligence.
The motion is accepted for the purpose of vote. Those who are in favor of the same, please vote ayes. Those who are not, please vote noes as soon as possible. Everybody has to vote since everybody is present and voting. Thank you. 3 is to none, 4 is to none, 5 is to none, 6 is to none, 7 is to none, 8 is to none. One vote left. Vidutpal, is it you? Yes. 9 is to 0, majority absolute, passed. We are now discussing, we are now into this agenda number 3.4, explainability of artificial intelligence. As a session consultant, my feedback is this: explainability of artificial intelligence is a very tricky and interesting issue. So I humbly suggest that when you get into it, do come with very good case studies or some examples on AI systems, because when you say explainability, it would depend It would depend and differ a lot based on the kind of AI systems which are there. Okay, this is just as a suggestion I'm giving as a session consultant. So let's go ahead with the session. I'm sharing the timer again. The first speaker will be Anurati, and Anurati, you have 5 minutes. Yes, Anurati, would you like to begin? Yeah. Okay, I think there's some. Okay, Anurati, we can. You were not audible. Actually, I think you're mute. That's the thing. Just 1 minute. Okay, we can wait for it. Okay. Meanwhile, join back in a minute. Okay, join back in a minute, and then Kashvi will speak, and after Kashvi, you can come in. So, guys, all the best for this. It's a very, very important sub agenda. So, go ahead, Kashvi. You have 5 minutes. Anuruti, you just come back, just rejoin. Okay. Yeah. Yes, Kashvi. Shall we begin?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, the explainability of artificial intelligence is definitely an emerging field for machine learning to address how the black box decisions of AI systems are made. So, a lot of the AI system decisions get away by the thing of it being deep learning algorithms or something that the customers or the stakeholders also at times don't tend to understand. That's why this is a move towards making such AI systems more explainable, understanding them more transparent in a way. So we could say that why did the AI systems make such a prediction? Why did the AI system do something like that? Why did the system succeed or why did it fail? So these are something that then could in future we would require such a system, because we cannot, or like the AI systems cannot always get away by just being black box decisions. Now the research on such explainability emerged again, like it was been going on since a while, but it really emerged again in 2016 for mainly three reasons. Firstly, that the deep learning community needed tools to explain these multi-layered neural networks. Secondly, in 2016, when the GDPR sparked a new focus on explainability, it became a legal as well as a human rights requirement. And thirdly, industrial users of AI recognize the need of explainability in building safe critical systems. So definitely, like entities have realized that building an explainable system is something that is in their interests as well, because users have their hesitancy in using AI systems, considering that they could lead to such problems. And having said this, that's why there is a need when we deal with such when we deal with an explainable AI. What would be needed is firstly global explainability, and secondly even levels of like local explainability. So what does global explainability would mean? That in the sense of like level of details that a user manual would give. So this would basically give out the potential risks of a system. So if any user is using it, they would know that okay, like this is what the AI could do. This is where potentially there could be some attacks, or potentially there could be mistakes, and the neural network is could be complicated in such decisions. Secondly, local explanations, when the user can actually experiment and control. So users are actually brought into the process as they are allowed that experimentation level, and they basically it's like the entities conducting workshops or conducting explanation of particular decisions. So this just brings out a lot more public opinion in the process. And going ahead, public opinion is the only like is the way which is mainly going to be a foundation for this explainable AI. Secondly, technical solutions like the hybrid AI. So hybrid AI is one technical solutions that is being coming up with, that is like several AI techniques have been used to in order to get the best from each method. So what this would do is that rather than going, okay, this is our goal, a combined methods will help, each sector or each sector to see which model would best suit their interests. Now, because AI is not, these systems will not have a one size fit all approach. It would definitely be like, suppose if it is a medical systems, these would need much more accountability, much more explainability, because these are systems that will very directly and have a huge impact on humans. So such models need to be based on a higher level of explainability, rather than commercialized systems where you would have to need certain data to be protected for maintaining that competitive advantage, or that data is not that important to, like those algorithms need to be developed in that way. So also for this, like there have been, the countries are also becoming more aware, and there have been regulatory solutions. Like a court in Netherlands reached a conclusion with regard to an algorithm used by Netherlands government to predict the likelihood of social security fraud. The court in this case analyzed that the test of proportionality, and it found that there is a lack of explanation for the computer generated risk that prevented individuals, in this case it was a social security fraud. So basically the use of proportionality was a test that was used by the courts, and this is something that, even entities would have to use proportionality, reasoned description, and such measures will have to be taken. Yeah, that would be my position on this agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Nicely said. Any point of information? No point of information so far. Okay. Anuradhi, are you ready?
Yes.
Go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. Thank you. So, explainable AI, or the explainability of AI, is one of the, if I may say, the one of the hottest topics in the field of machine learning. Now, machine learning models are often thought of as the black boxes that are very difficult to understand. Now, in the end, these models are going to be used by humans who need to be not only need to understand them, but also need to trust them. Understand the errors they make, the reasoning that goes behind them, since they are going to be the end uh, consumers and users of it. So the first question I think that goes is that what is the explainable AI or explainability of AI? So the we can somewhat say that it goes through a process, which is that it uses some sort of data to train a model, which through a specific process, and this process shows results, which is then fed into inputs, and then is then output, uh, and which is output and as a prediction in a specific interface, and this is finally used by the users. So what is really important over here is to understand that um, that the users will have doubts as to what goes on, and how do we trust um, a, a machine that is come into the system now. So the problem here that we can see is that there is no prediction of there's no prediction. Uh, there's nothing to rely on. No trust factor over here. So uh, w- and what is really important is that we understand how this system works. It is important to know. It is important to take into account the uh, the user response. It is important to take into account how the users want certain aspects. Also, the scientists and the professionals who deal with the areas are going to be well versed with it, but when it comes to the layman, it's going to be very limited knowledge. uh, so therefore, Understanding what happens when the machine learning models make predictions is one of the important things that needs to be addressed. It also needs to address that comfort, comfortable comfortability of the technology with the users. Also, for some sectors like insurance and banking, there are sometimes legislative restrictions that the model must also account for. Also, in critical conditions like we're talking about medicine, AI can have a great impact and it can also change the quality of life. And over here, it is very important that we make sure that it is understandable and it takes into account the layman. Thank you. I think that's all.
Thank you, Anuriti. You had 1 minute 20 seconds. You had actually. So, any point of information to Anuriti? No? Okay, let's go ahead. Mridulpal, you have 5 minutes from now on. Go ahead.
Yes. So, most of us have very little visibility and knowledge as to how AI systems make the decisions they do, and as a result, how the results are being applied in the various fields that AI and machine learning is being applied to. We don't know about it. And that is what creates the black box problem. The simple fact that we cannot reverse engineer a certain decision that has been made to the root cause of the decision being made. The inference that the AI system drew, which caused it to consequently make its conclusion. Now, explainable AI, XAI, is an emerging field in machine learning as known by all and as stated by all. Now, one way to gain explainability in AI systems is to use machine learning algorithms that are inherently explainable. For example, simple forms of machine learning such as decision trees, Bayesian classifiers, and other algorithms that have certain amounts of traceability and transparency in their decision making. Now, the United States Defense Advanced Research Project Agency, the DARPA, has been pursuing efforts to produce explainable AI solutions through a number of funded research initiatives. DARPA described AI explainability in three parts, which included prediction accuracy, which meant models will be able to explain how conclusions are reached to improve for future decision making, decision understanding, and trust from human users and operators, as well as inspection and traceability of actions undertaken by the AI systems. Traceability is aimed to enable humans to get into AI decision loops and have the ability to stop or control its tasks whenever need arises. An AI system is not only expected to perform a certain task or impose decisions, but also to have a model with the ability to give a transparent report of why it took specific conclusions. Now, uh, I don't think how right this is, but I would like to draw an example from a contemporary movie that was made in the year 2015. It was called Eye in the Sky. Now, in the movie, there was it was a basic terrorist situation. A few terrorists were holed up in a house in Afghanistan, and the U.S. government decided to launch a drone attack, and they wanted to burn the whole place down using missiles from a unmanned drone, not unmanned, but it was controlled remotely from the Pentagon itself. Now, what happened was a girl of maybe 12 or 13 years was selling bread outside of that house in which the terrorists were holed up. And the terrorists had bombs and guns on them, which made them an immediate threat. Now, the Pentagon clearly understood that via the illustrations that in case they launch the missiles, the surrounding radius of about a mile would get blown up, and consequently, the girl would have to die. Now, in the end, spoiler alert. In the end, the girl died. The girl was saved because the government used a special agent to buy all the bread that the girl was selling, and the girl eventually went home, and the strike was done. However, in the real world, it is not what happens. United States of America is highly utilitarianist. So the same utilitarianist agenda is programmed into the AI by means of algorithms, and therefore the AI would take the decision very cleanly and efficiently, and I think within a few seconds only. the place would go down in bits. Now we need to understand that this is not a black box problem. Why the AI kept this took this decision, because it has been programmed to do it in that way. This is most certainly not a black box problem, because I believe many people will consider this as a black box problem, that why the AI made the decision to blow the place up when there was a girl outside of it. It is not a black box problem. I think awareness should first be spread about what a black box problem actually is before getting into the details of explainability of AI. Obviously, explainability of AI is something which is very much needed, and which needs to be researched and worked upon, no doubt. But I think the grasp on the fundamental concepts are much more significant in terms to the advanced ones. Thank you.
Thank you, Mudutpal. You had 20 seconds left. Any point of information to Mudutpal? We are waiting for 5 to 6 seconds. Seems there's none. Mr. Prakhar, you have 5 minutes. Okay, just 1 minute. Okay, a pass is accepted. Brantik, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Abhinandan. So, when we're talking about AI explainability, and so we first of all you have to understand the application of AI as a problem-solving tool offers a great promise for advancement. So, here like there's the illustrations of like company and take them as an example. So recently that I guess last year there was a survey done by Deloitte where 76% of the executives said that like AI is a sustainable transformation tool for companies, and even but yeah, some people say like some of them like a third of each company say that there are some ethical issues which might concern the like integration of AI into corporate entities. So, conceptually, AI ethics applies to both the whole of the AI solution as well as each part of the AI solution. So, AI can be used to achieve an unethical business outcome, even though it's part machine learning, deep learning, NLP, and or computer vision were all designed to operate in an ethical way. So, if you take an example, like for example, an automated mortgage loan application system might include computer vision and other tools designed to read handwritten loan applications, and even they can analyze information provided by the applicant and make an underwriting decision based on parameters programmed into solution. So, these technologies do not process such data through an ethical lens. They just simply process the data. Yet, if the mortgage company inadvertently programs the system with goals or parameters that might discriminate unfairly based on race, gender, or certain geographic information, the system could be used to make discriminatory loan approvals or denials. So, since I was talking, like yesterday, I also talked about AI biases and all. So, in contrast, an AI solution with an ethical purpose that can include processes that lack integrity or activity towards this ethical end. So, a company may deploy an AI system with machine learning capabilities to support the ethical goal of non-discriminatory personnel recruiting process. The company begins by using AI capability to identify performance criteria based on the best performance in the organization's past. So there's some of the use of AI into corporate entity and all. So uh, like the use of the introduction of AI was mainly used to make the lives of humans simpler. But until unless there's a check and balance, will actually put the analytical purpose of AI into into check. So until it's like for that we have to do reverse engineering. We have to make policies and regulations, and for that we have to come up with for that we have to do rigorous consultations and all. So until if we do that, I guess AI might pose a lot of problems into the lives of human beings. So, like if in other words, I say the machine learns based on data that is processed, and if the data sample is not representative or accurate, then the lesson it learns from the data will not be accurate and may lead to unethical outcomes also. So, I want to quote this four primary dimension of concern for AI. First one is technology, data, and security. Second is risk management and compliance. Third is people skills, organizational models and training. And fourth is public policy, legal and regulatory frameworks and impact on society, as I said earlier. So, so we have to keep these points in mind, and whenever we try to explain, try to foster with the explainability of AI. So before that, we have to consider these points, and we have to check the ethics of AI before coming up with any regulation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krantik. You had 5 seconds left. So, any point of information from anybody? Nobody. Okay. No issues. Summer, you have 5 minutes. You can start now. Okay, you will pass on this. Okay. Network issues. Sanat, you have 5 minutes to begin. Yeah.
Hello, am I audible?
Perfectly audible. Go ahead.
Uh, in a very lucid sense, explanation means to clarify on information. Now, the question when it comes to AI ability is uh, how can we take advantage of what AI systems have to offer when we don't know what factors are they considering to reach that particular outcome. Now, accountability in this context means the ability to determine whether a decision was made in accordance with procedural and substantive standards or not. Uh, this question of how to create an accountable AI is important because accountability also ensures that there is accountability also ensures that there is that people can trust that particular system. The question of when and what kind of explanation might be required of AI systems is urgent uh, because AI is going to be a very pervasive part of our society and is starting to become a very pervasive part of our society where AI is opting for certain decisions and we don't know why it is opting for that. Now that can become a real quagmire situation. Um, Recently, in the 2018 session of the EU GDPR, a potential right to explanation was debated when it comes to AI. The 2018 resolution of the debate on the right to explanation with regards to AI provides a right to information about the existence, logic, and envisaged consequences of automated decision making systems in Articles 13 and 15 of the EU GDPR. The degree to which this constitutes a right to explanation is the subject of significant debate, but the fact that a major piece of legislation even arguably contains such a right prompts the question of whether explanations are necessary or sufficient to convey meaningful information about the operation of AI and other automated decision-making systems. So, why is explanation needed? Uh, Basically, if we have to analyze the decision of an AI, and we need to realize and we need to analyze what kind of inputs has it used. Until AI gives us the explanation that what kind of inputs it has used, we won't be able to uh, have a discourse upon it, whether those inputs were undeniable or inadequate or not. Uh, explanation serves as an important tool for accountability, and this can also be derived from our judicial systems. So, if a judge passes a judgment, whether he had the adequate rationale behind it uh, would further uh, to justify his judgment. Only then his judgment can hold up, or otherwise it would be invalidated in a higher court. Uh, when it comes to inexplicable outcomes, what if the AI decides that all humans need to be eradicated? So, AI needs to have an explanation to this so that we can identify what factors AI took into account, and we can further guide and develop the AI to not take those factors into account, or guide the AI in a different path so that it does not reach to such an outcome again. Uh, Finally, we demand an explanation for a decision even if the inputs and outputs appear proper because of the context in which the decision is made, thus ensuring that the people who rely on the AI, they trust the AI. I guess all these factors need to be taken into account when we talk about the explainability of AI. And considering that AI is being employed at mass scale in various fields in the society, it is a very pertinent and urgent issue which should be discussed in international conventions and our own nation's parliament for that matter. Thank you. I'd be ending now.
Thank you so much, Sanat. 20 seconds left. Okay, as a session concerned, my exercise, my right to question. So my question is this. You actually elaborated a European standard of explanation. I should say preliminary basis. My question is in this way. Can right to explanation have a cultural aesthetic view? Which means that yes, context based explanation is a very important aspect of AI ethics and its utilitarianism, to be very honest. So, the European context gives a very schematic agenda. But for example, uh, there are certain cultural, aesthetic plus economic concepts, or I should say considerations, realities, which can be in various countries, which can, because it is also a matter of secrecy, security, and privacy at the same time, three things at the same time, then how can we address the issue of culture, aesthetics, and economics? Because I think that being a disruptive technology, artificial intelligence can influence. What do you think on it? Hello, Sanat, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So basically, what I'd like to say on this is that uh, different cultures are based on different values. Like mostly, the Western morality, Western philosophy is based on Kantian, is based on Aristotle, Kant, and probably Schopenhauer. So they'd have a different set of moral codes and a different uh, set of ethics than what a Hindu or a Buddhist society would follow. So there's a multitude of moral frameworks which need to be taken into account when we are when it comes to explain when it comes to explainability of AI. So because uh, while moral frameworks are drawn from philosophy and religion is important, basically they form the very root of the society. And to understand the ethics, we must understand the culture, and basically ethics and culture go hand in hand. uh, and because ethics and culture are joined, we cannot study ethics from solely from a philosophical abstraction. Ethics must be studied in an everyday cultural context. uh, and it's not just the Western philosophy which should be studied with regards to it, but a multiplicity of varied philosophies coming from diverse backgrounds, so that we can develop an AI which can offer an explanation to all of these cultures and people from all of these backgrounds coming from diverse set of countries.
Nice response. Anything to add, delegates? What do you think? Nobody? Okay. Well, actually, it's a nice response. So it's really interesting to see how that develops because cyberspace and disruptive tech transcends geography. Unless we have sprint in it, or if we, even within the internet, we have certain disparities like network issues or strategic prevention of flow of data, whether transboundary or internal. So in that case, it's a very interesting thing, and we must take that into consideration. So those who are writing this report can also produce a resolution on this, and at the same time, then can take this point into consideration. This is something from me, so I just gave it. Thank you, Sanad. That was nice. Shruti, you have 5 minutes, but before that, any point of information to Sanad? Nope, no.
Just I had one point to add also, like how like you spoke about like cultures and different like
Yes.
how that would affect into explanations. So even the fact that why was this, like how I think Sanat spoke about inputs, so this would come from a fact that why was this, for what purpose was this AI used in this system. So every like states, like western states would have a different purpose, eastern states have a different purpose. Like I read about how in Africa, like the thing of getting an AI was more than, for it has to take into consideration the collective rights of people. So if that's the purpose, then there would be an explanation for what factors that took into consideration. So even
Right.
that, like contextually, it will matter that, because even basic purpose of it was that. So that was the reason for them to take, like, for the AI to take into consideration that input.
Right, and it actually affects economics also because when you use disruptive tech, it affects your economic needs as well as your economic cycle. Um, for example, if you automate everything, obviously it's not possible to do it. Everything, and I mean the main economic aspects of companies and governments. What will happen is that the man-made cost will be replaced, right? That's the best theory everybody makes. Then what happens is the digital cost also will increase because of the simple thing that globalization cannot be tolerated easily. And globalization has always been, it has been since the Bronze Age, since the, yeah, I think even before the Bronze Age, globalization always existed. It just has transformed day by day through laws and through politics. But here also, so a very interesting point made by Sri. That also is an interesting thing. Individual libertarianism or collectivism. How will it work out? So it's a nice point made. Anybody wishes to add? Yep. Okay. Yeah, nicely said, Kashmi. So let's go ahead. Shruti, you have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. So, in the era of data science, artificial intelligence is making possible feats possible. Making impossible feats possible. Driverless cars, IBM Watson's question answering system, cancer detection, electronic trading, etc., are all made possible through the advanced decision making ability of artificial intelligence. The deep layers of neural network have a magical ability to recreate the human mind and its functionalities. When humans make decisions, they have the ability to explain their thought process behind it. Data science may have trouble explaining why the algorithm gave a decision, and the layman end user may not simply trust the machine's prediction without contextual proof and reasoning. Explainability is a multifaceted topic. It encompasses both individual models and larger systems that incorporate them. It refers not only to whether the decision or model output are interpretable, but also whether or not the whole process and intention surrounding the model can be properly accounted for. Now, let's go on why we need explainability. Explainability is motivated like due to the lacking transparency of black box approaches, which do not foster trust and acceptance of AI generally and ML specially. Rising legal and privacy aspect, etc., with the new European General Data Protection Regulation will make black box approaches difficult to use in business because they often are not able to explain why a machine decision has been made. Now, BM Watson shook the world when it won Jeopardy, beating the best human player. But when it was marketed to hospitals to help the oncology department detect the cancer, it failed miserably. Cancer detection is a very difficult and a serious topic. The doctors as well as the patients were unable to trust the machine at each stage of consulting and treatment, as Watson wouldn't provide the reason for its result. Moreover, when its result agreed with the doctors, it couldn't provide a diagnosis. But it does not end here. Lately, there has been debate over the accuracy of explainability. Like how accurate the explainability can be. Explainable models are easily understandable but don't work very well as they are very simple. Accurate model work well when they aren't explainable as they are complicated. The main issue with explainable AI is whether it can accurately fulfill the task it was designed for. The trade-off decision to be made should depend on the application field of algorithm and the end user to whom it's accountable. When dealing with the technical users who are acquainted with the field and have high trust level, especially tech companies or researchers having accurate model would prefer a high explainability as performance is very important. Now, the success of AI model is due to machines' own internal representation, which are even more complicated than manual generated features, leading to its explicable nature. Good initiative by leading institutes like DARPA, Google, DeepMind, etc., are leading the necessary changes. But despite this, there will always be a trade off between the explainability and accuracy, whose balance majorly depends on the various factors like end users, legal liability, technicality of the concerned party, and the field of application. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Shruti, you had 1 minute, 10 seconds. Any point of information to Shruti? No point of information. Thank you so much. Samar, I've shared the document to you. Okay, you can have a look. So, thank you. Have 5 minutes. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So the explanatory of artificial intelligence in their main tactics of artificial in explanatory are neural networks, which are gaining much hype today and are one of the most widely used algorithms when it comes to deep learning. This the use of neural network is relying heavily on issues business try to solve. And neural network is defined as computing system that comprise a number of highly interconnected elements or nodes. Basically, it represents an attempt to simulate the biological nerve system relating to both architecture and information processing strategies. Unlike, unlike the other algorithms, neural networks with their deep learning cannot be programmed directly for the task. Just like a new developing brain, they have the requirement to learn the informations. The major advantage of neural network is its ability to outpace almost every other machine learning algorithms. However, there are some challenges are to, for instance, likewise in medical conditions, in cancer detections, and high performance in improving because the better the performance, the more people can be diagnosed. But there are also machine learning problems where a traditional algorithm delivers a more satisfying outcome. The same challenges and the disadvantages of neural networks are the one of is black box, which is the very most disadvantage of neural network is its black box nature because it has the ability to approximate any functions. The study is structure, but don't give any insight on the structure of the function being experimented. So, understanding the cause of the mistake, it requires features that are human interpretable. This is significant because in subdomains, interpretability is critical. And this is reason why most of the leverage networks to predict whether a person is creditworthy as they need to explain to him why they didn't get a loan. If not, the person may feel unfairly treated. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. At 2 minutes, 7 seconds left. Any point of information to time? Yeah, welcome, Dave. We have registered you as present and voting. Fine.
Yes, perfect, perfect. Hello. Sorry for the
Thank you.
delay.
Thank you. Okay, we actually were discussing explainability of artificial intelligence. We are so we
Okay.
will discuss something
Which sub agenda is this?
within the third agenda. We are discussing explainability of AI.
Explainability of AI intelligence. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have anything to say on this as of now. I'll commence with the next session, with the next agenda. Am I audible?
Uh, yes. Good afternoon. I think it's audible now. Perfect. I think I just left it in it when weird. So, Dave, I could not hear you when you said something. Um,
Uh, yes,
yeah.
I was saying that I'll speak for the next agenda. I don't have anything to
Okay.
contribute at the moment with regards to the explainability of AI, so I'll be speaking up for the next agenda.
Perfect. Perfect. If you
Okay,
should write something
thank.
about it, you can write. I can share the document
So,
with you for today.
yes. I am
That you
writing
can do.
about the first agenda, which deals with the nature of transborder, nature of data usage as transborder consideration.
Right. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Works well. Works well.
Okay,
Let's go ahead. Okay, fine.
okay.
So everybody has discussed it. Congratulations. We went through this very well. So let's get on to the next one. Okay. Now you have two sub agendas left, and we will discuss the report of Conrad. Why will we discuss this so easy and faster? Number one, while I'm showing you these, you can actually propose any sub agenda within the agenda itself, or you can actually discuss these two and get away. That is something which is your choice. Both of will take time. At least one of it will you will discuss after the break. So let's take it this way. So the first one is legal entity slash juristic entity status of artificial intelligence, and the second one is philosophical and cultural differences with regards to AI, management sciences, and ethics. So, what would you like to choose the delegates? Yeah.
The legal status, the legal or the juristic status of AI.
Just give me a minute. Just give me a minute.
Yeah, if we could hold on for a moment, I think Abhivardhan has lost his connection, so he'll be back in a moment.
Pardon my internet for this, actually, what I would say. Anyways, so where were we? I think we had to pass a motion, right? So let's pass the motion, okay? First of all, so one of the delegates has to propose a motion to discuss the legal and heuristic status of artificial intelligence. Please do it. Please propose the motion. Thank you. I have a request. Uh, okay, fine. I hope I'm audible to all, right? It's audible. Shudhaj, is it audible now? Yeah.
Yes, Abhivardhan, you are audible.
Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead. Perfectly fine. Network is fine now. So first, let's get it voted. Dave, would you like to propose the motion to move forward?
Yes, yes. I would like to propose the motion dealing with the legal or the juristic status of AI.
Those in favor, please accept the purpose of voting. Those who are in favor, please vote aye. Those in chat, everybody has to vote except Prachi Puranik because Prachi is not confirmed whether she's present. And so please vote. Kshitij, please count them. True.
So we have got 9 for eyes so far.
Not everybody has voted. There are 13 delegates. Okay, let's assume for 12 because, uh, yeah, because Prachi is not
Alright, so we have 11 for eyes so far.
one vote is not illegal. And we have options. Let's go ahead. Uh, also, please send back. If you are voting, we will the same sub agenda, which is the legal jurisdiction. Another thing you have
I'm sorry, you were not audible. Can I go ahead and speak?
yes, yes, you can go ahead.
The timer.
Yes.
So you can start. So once the timer starts, we can begin. So the timer begins now. Yes, Anurati, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. So, talking about the legal entity or the juristic entity status of the artificial intelligence, uh, this is, as we can call it, one of the most pressing issues and very important questions at this time, since we have to, since the AI will be in between the humans and will interact with the environment. It is important to understand and to also put whether this will have legal rights, whether they will be a legal entity, they will have a juristic entity. Will they be like corporates which have a distinct legal entity that they can be sued, and they cannot be sued. So, starting with some examples that have taken place recently, where Sophia, a humanoid, was granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia, and there was recently an accident which was caused by the Uber's self-driving car. So these examples and these situations create awareness that we need to have. We need to give some sort of legal entity or some sort of legal uh, legal binding to these situations. So as we can see, a legal individual or a legal human being, human being being legal has some rights and obligations, which is the first aspect. The second aspect is that they are held accountable and liable for their actions. The third, that they can execute and are bound by contracts. The fourth one is the employment, that they are susceptible to employment. And the fifth one is that the right to be sued and to sue. So, talking about these points, I will talk about how AI and the concept of legal entity of an AI. So, the first one being the legal rights and duties. So, my position on this aspect is that uh, giving legal rights and duties is not the best way, as um, it is hard to say that it will commit or it will commit prohibited acts which for its own purposes. So thus negligence, and the AI may ensure that AI comply that the AI code, I'm sorry, may ensure that AI complies with certain rules, but application of such rules is not the result of an act of will. Also, the concept of freedom of speech, moral losses, and responsibilities makes no sense to the AI. It lacks conscious. It lacks conscious, even though it can think of its own. It is not aware. So therefore, it is limited to the context of responsibility for injuries that they cause. Um, then other so in humans, if punished, are done so based on the decision making process, because of the decision making process that they go through. So therefore, applying this to the AI is not going to be entirely right. If another pressing issue or question that comes to mind is of whether to hold the manufacturers or the programmers of AI accountable for or liable. So I in this on this notion contend that it is not right, as anyone is supposed to be liable on only on the okay, situations that they can foresee. So once AI has left their premises and is out in the world interacting, uh, holding them accountable for the actions or holding them liable for the harm that is so caused to the humans or others is not going to be the right approach. There have been various case studies uh, with animals who are not legal entities. Those can be taken into account. Uh, so yeah, that is my position on this topic. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that, Anurati. If anybody has any questions for Anurati, okay. I would request Mr. Dev Tejani to speak next, please.
I'm sorry, Mr. Kshitij. Did you call out my name? I couldn't hear you clearly.
Yeah, I would request you to speak next, please.
Okay, okay, okay. Am I audible? Am I perfectly audible? Hello, am
Perfectly
I?
audible, Dev.
Okay,
Perfectly
okay.
audible.
I'll begin. I'll
Yes,
begin.
yes, Dev, you're audible.
So the legal status of AI, the technological paradigm of the digital economy, which creates new markets, can be said to be giving rise to new regulatory measures and the subjects for control, including artificial intelligence. Now, this trend can concern the formation of technologies which would radically change the sustainable market economy, thereby forcing professionals out of different areas. Now, with regards to the legal profession, with regards to lawyers, the situation offers little hope since there are technologies right now which could probably displace lawyers from the market. Now, one of the noteworthy projects that I would like to cite here or talk about that affects both the legal services market is the emergence of the do not pay chat in the UK, which was developed by an Harvard graduate, and this currently offers over 1,000 fields of law. Now, the popularity of the above science is due to the fact that it has successfully challenged over 1,60,000 parking tickets issued illegally to car owners. And what this system basically does is, so the creator has coded the entire algorithm of his application in such a way that all the user has to do is just put his request, whether he is charged illegally for a parking ticket, let's say, or it also deals with other petty issues. Now, the processed requests amount to 64%, and now there are many more other markets as well wherein the AI as a field is developing. So now I would like to cite the example of the Russian market wherein Bank, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, pardon me, launched a robot which was a robot lawyer which could file claims for individuals. Now the company Glavstra Control also launched a bot to settle insurance dispute, and at the same time it is already possible to stop the current technological trend. Therefore, the existing technological paradigm needs a legislative basis in order to regulate the AI. Now, in general, the approach to AI is implemented either in the form of a software package, which is virtual platform, chatbots, programs, which do not have a material shell, or programmatically a robot or a drone as an instrument for specific goals, which could be laid down in the framework of a legal relation formed by legal entities. At the same time, there are cases where, when actions with regards to robot status contradict the current national legal norms. So, as my learned fellow speaker just spoke about, I would like to cite a case from Saudi Arabia, wherein in Riyadh they launched a robot called Sophia, which was positioned as a woman and was granted the Saudi Arabian rights. Now, this step contradicts a number of laws that could determine the model of behavior of subjects of legal relations in different conditions. Firstly, it contradicts the norms of Saudi Arabia citizenship that can be obtained in the following ways. Now, according to the Saudi nationality system 2018, a person can be granted a citizenship status in Saudi Arabia is by birth or by marriage. I would also like to cite an example from Japan, wherein in Japan in 2017, it was a chatbot called Shibuya Mirai was created under a special regulation. However, this action again contradicted the laws with regards to the residence permit procedure in Japan. It opened for foreign specialists employed in Japanese companies, participants in the family reunification program, entrepreneurs and investors doing business in Japan. Now, uh, in the Japan, the citizenship process is regulated by the laws on citizenship of Japan, that is the Nationality Law of Japan 2018. Now, the law states two options wherein citizenship could be granted either by birth or naturalization. In the case of birth, the child should be born in Japan, okay, without reference to the nationality of the parents. However, now what is imperative? to bear in mind is that the above mentioned legal precedents of AI status, wherein they have been deemed to be regarded as equal to human beings in the Saudi Arabia and Japan, it is imperative to consider that the procedural aspect of the legal relations needs to be taken into consideration. So it can be said that neither the chatbot nor the robot Sophia applied for citizenship permit, and neither the chatbot nor the robot meets the criteria of capacity, that is the age or the qualification, and neither do they meet the criteria of settledness. As a matter of fact, they do not even speak the national language to the extent set out by the law. Now, further problems that arise for AI to comply with the legislation specified by the host country have also arisen. Uh, Now, in the case, further moving on, it is imperative to understand that most countries have been quick in formulating the necessary legislative framework, or advisory councils have been designed to resolve these issues regulating AI as a newly formed subject of law. So, thus, the UK formed the AI committee in the House of Lords, and the US government does not has still not considered the legal status of AI as an individual person and the focus of AI legal education. However, Section 3 of the bill on AI, which was designed by the UK, provides AI generalizing definitions, which deals with artificial systems capable of performing tasks without human presence, which are autonomous systems. Then there are systems that think as by analogy with the human brain and are able to pass the Turing test or another comparable test by processing natural language, representing knowledge, automated reasoning, and learning. And there are many other countries who have imposed these things. Let's say the German Traffic Act imposes the responsibility for managing an automated or semi automated vehicle on the owner and envisages partial involvement of the Federal Ministry of Transport and the digital infrastructure. So, similarly, a lot of acts and a lot of countries have made acts which defines the types of AI use, covers issues of liability, ethics, and provides basic rules for the conduct of developers, operators, and manufacturers in the field of AI and robotics. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, Dave. Anybody has any point of information for Dave or any questions?
Yes. Hello.
Yes, please go ahead, Samar.
Yes, actually, I just want to add the point. So now there are legislations in Saudi Arabia and Japan. Now there is a scenario where, suppose under the rules of Saudi Arabia, where the citizenship has been granted to a robot. Now the point of concern is whether this particular citizenship has been applied by that particular person, like for Sophia, which is a robot. Is he applying her own free will? If we are giving her a status of a citizenship, so is in compliant with the human? Because now there's a conflict. What happens if in suppose tomorrow there's a traffic there's a robot who is walking down the street, and he accidentally harm a person? So how the liability will play out, whether they are treated as per the status of a human? So how are they being educated in front of the authority? Secondly, whether there should be a different set of thought where we should like have a separate legislation altogether, regulation for the machine, and they should be treated accordingly. So this is what we have to look upon on the future, that whether the AI has its own free will, or whether it has a capability to understanding of a human. Because if we granting them a citizenship and the other rights like speech, like Anukrati has stated that whether we should grant them the freedom of speech and expression and every other rights as compatible to the human. So so the big issue arise. So what happens in these cases where the liability arises in case? So there will be a conflict whether we will give them a status of a human or not, or whether there should be a separate rules or not. That's all I want. Thank
Well, yeah, Dave, go ahead, please.
Yeah. So I think Summer has not understood it clearly. I'm sorry, but what I was trying to say is the Saudi Arabia legislation does not provide any rights or guarantees to these people, the robots. Sorry, not people, the robots. So as a consequence, when the robot is equated to a person, there will be a problem both in Sharia courts and in the courts of general jurisdiction, since the model of conduct is not specified by the Saudi Arabian legislation. So. Uh, so for AI to comply with the legislation, it needs to firstly the laws firstly need to be made compatible. Now, the emancipated woman is a robot that does not comply with the requirements which are specified for the clothing, the ethics of behavior, and this robot should have been brought to administrative and criminal responsibility under the Saudi Arabia legislation before granting its citizenship status. So, what I'm trying to say here is that citizenship status before granting, before putting a robot on the same level as a human, countries need to adopt laws. So what I'm trying to say is Japan and Saudi Arabia have still not brought these laws into consideration. However, the EU, the countries in the EU, the UK, then there is Russia, then there is Germany. They have incorporated certain provisions in their current laws, in their current legal regime, which incorporates the use of AI and robots in a way which could, be safe, and the liabilities are also being imposed upon the creators in certain jurisdictions. Thank you.
Oh, I'm just adding the point that
Well,
what happens if there is a conflict, like, you know, where a machine
sure.
harm a person. So,
So some of the
like,
some of the question that you had raised, or the point that you had added today,
like,
is going to be a major subtopic for tomorrow's AIGA. So I think that would
okay,
be pretty interesting. And in fact, when we talk about, I was recently reading a book, and that is why I consider the Turing test to be also faulty to a certain extent, is that we can't consider that these machines or these people, I call them people, so like they've said these people, so I call them people, have a certain level of consciousness like humans do. So consciousness, even in certain humans, I mean, so it is a much deeper thought. When we, when even when we talk about a brain dead people, so the fact of consciousness, or the topic of consciousness, is very deep. So I hope we'll have an interesting discussion tomorrow. And
Yes.
also, I would like to add to what Dave said, where robots are being used to, in to for insurance claims and things like that. So there is a very interesting concept that is coming in the Middle East, in countries like Malta, where they call this robo advisory. So robo advisory is an increasing trend in the BFSI market, so banking, financial, and insurance market. So I think we will discuss this in tomorrow's session. Hopefully, we have a very interesting speaker coming from legal. So I hope you will have fun. So yes, moving ahead to the next speaker, Kashvi Shetty. Ms. Kashvi Shetty, you can speak next.
Yes. Okay. So actually, then I would just like to begin with the point that was being discussed. So about like conflicts, and if such critical decisions have to be taken by an AI, this would like even the point of consciousness of or of morality, considering that these are technological or artifacts, what kind of morality should be attributed to them, then should be attributed to humans. So I believe that it depends on different circumstances or on different contexts where the AI is used. So now, like Kshitij gave the example of robo advisors. So robo advisors are something that have been used in investment markets for a long time, and in USA they are specifically governed by the SEC, by the SEC rules, which govern the stockbrokers and other people as well. So the entities are is essentially responsible for any human errors in the same way as they would be responsible by these robo advisors that are carrying on the process. And this would be because even like a lot of challenges that are there with these robo advisors are due to non-updated algorithms. So this is essentially human errors, so that's why it is easier to place them in a context where they can be liable under the same regulations. Now in the case of a robot, or in the case of something of a system, an AI system which has much more free will, or which has much more autonomy, Like a very recent example that comes to my mind is the self-driving cars. So in 2018, I think there was a accident by this Uber self-driving car, because of which a pedestrian died. Now this was the first time that this had happened, like, of at least the first time that a pedestrian died due to a self-driving car. And what happened was that these people had an out of the court settlement. No one ever came to know about the settlement amount, but at least that we what we did know that the entity did pay up for this. Considering this could be a possibility, a potential aspect, that corporate entities do take like the entities did take responsibility for such an event. So this could be some liability issues that could be taken up further. But in the same issue, like when this was an Uber self-driving car that caused the collision, after of a same, like in 2018 only, later in the year, Uber came out with a report saying that, a safety report saying that, how self-driving cars are much more safer than human driving the cars. So this was their ethical standpoint to say that uh, we are maintaining the standards, and that was a one-off event. But like, this does bring out worrying levels, that whether private, this commercialization to an extent is just taking shortcuts but not actually meeting to the ethical standards. So where do we draw the line, and then what would be the liability for such an entity which does not have a specific, like, what do you say, a legal entity under the law. So but it is now, in the coming days, when it's not that ambiguous, like Article 12 of the United Nations Convention on the Use of Electronic Communications in International Contracts, it says that a person, a natural entity, or on behalf of whom a program was created, must ultimately be liable for any action generated by the machine. The reasoning is based on the notion that a tool has no will of its own. So this is applicable for certain circumstances where there's an algorithm based machine that processes. But in case of a robot, you cannot say the same thing, that probably it does have a certain amount of will. Like even in the example of Microsoft had launched this was a very this was a thing that happened, and Microsoft had launched an artificial intelligence program named Tay, and it endowed it with a deep learning ability. Basically, their object was that the robot would shape its worldwide view based on online interactions with other people. But merely in a time period of 24 hours, the robot started using unruly language, because this is something that unruly language, racist and sexist comments, this is something that he picked up from these worldwide reactions. So these are things that could be predicted, but possibly it cannot. It's not like definitely predictive. So, but still, the thing that they had done, that within 24 hours this was removed. So something that that is a practice and must be done is to limit the possibilities, even if an experiment is being done in the first initial stages of the initial stages of when we see negative impacts. It should be something that should not be continued with. And also a very important aspect with the ambiguity in the entity status, shared liability is definitely something that could be seen, but precautionary approaches is something that is the most important. Carrying on comprehensive assessments and carrying on and seeing like the negative consequences that this could have, and developing practices based on that is something which would be very important. Lastly, saying this is about the precautionary aspect, also something that the European Parliament had proposed recently was a specific legal status for smart robots, and it had an insurance system and compensatory fund with an aim of creating a protection system for such intelligence machines. So shared liability could be one approach for certain circumstances, and such a circumstance where compensatory funds are created in case of of robots which could have been said to have their certain will. So this is also a consumer centric approach to provide a more regulatory aspect, that if any victim is hurt, they have these compensatory funds. Though at the end of the day, this approach would also say that the creator is liable, but it does seem like a plausible option that can be used. So yeah, there could be different circumstances of different governance mechanism according to the AI machines that are there and what their purpose is. This is my position on this sub agenda. Thank you.
All right. Well, that was very interesting, Kaushri. Next, so yeah, if anybody has any point of information for Kashvi or anything to add to what Kashvi said, you can go ahead.
Yeah, I would like to raise a point here. So, as Kashmir said
Yes,
that,
sir, please.
robot may have a will to decide to take a decision, but can we really say that? Because robots are only following the algorithm, the instructions that is given to it, or is applying that algorithm on the data that it is getting. So, can we really say that it has its own will?
Yeah. So this is exactly the where the ambiguity plays in, that we don't know whether they have a will or no. But at the same time, there's a certain protection required. That's why a European Parliament move of going out and sending and setting up a compensatory fund, an insurance fund, in case like victims are hurt, is something, according to me, would be a smart approach. That because human life is something you would value. Now there was an example that, suppose if in AI things that that some human life is not important because of inputs that is there, because of differences in data, then how would we counter that? So in this case, that's why such compensatory funds or even a model of shared liability with operators would be required, because we will not be able to say, at least at this moment, that uh, was the did they have a free will or not, or what inputs were used for the AI to take such a decision.
Uh,
Yeah, thank you.
Adding to the
Very
point, uh, if I may. Hello.
yeah,
Yeah,
please.
anyone can go ahead.
Yes.
Yes, go
So,
on, please.
like, I have watched this series of Age of AI. So, under the Age of AI, where is a brainchild kind of AI system which has been created. So, under that, they are teaching him the music compositions. Now, what happens? This system has interpreting its surrounding. So, he's learning from the surrounding and giving it a different interpretation. So we can say that it is on the beginning stage where it is giving an interpretation, it is giving something new. So we can say down the line, like 10 years, we might see where the AI might have his own free will, because he is learning from the surrounding and giving its own version of thought. So yes, that can happen. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Like adding to Summer's point, that's exactly what happened with the Microsoft program too. That like the whatever that that they did introduce, they introduced it to understand worldwide reactions, but it understood racist, sexist comments. So who would you say? Would you like blame it on the public, or like he still used kind of the free will to see what the worldwide is done? Though the algorithm was the creator, but who would we blame in such a situation?
Mr. Prakhar Prakash, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, please, we can go ahead. Because this is the discussion
All
that
right.
will be going on for long, I think, if not for long.
Of course. Uh,
Yeah.
all right. So, Mridutpal, if you're if you're online, you can speak next, please.
Yes. So I really do not have much to speak upon this issue or this sub agenda. Thing is, I'd like to say that I'd like to rather raise a question to all of us present here, that is the juristic identity of an artificial intelligence system, the legal entity that is it by extension just another instance of vicarious liability? Because what happens is, if um, if an artificial intelligence system does something out of the normal, and it is prosecuted upon that, the farthest thing, the harshest thing that can happen to the artificial intelligence system as a punishment is decommissioning of it. It can be decommissioned or it can be dismantled, never to be used again, max to max. There's nothing more that can happen to it. But in those cases, who is liable to compensate for the damages? Most certainly, the AI will not be compensating for the damages. the creator or the company, the people who have programmed it or have designed the algorithms, they shall have to pay for the damage that has been done by the AI. So, so indirectly they are liable. So is it all about the rights and duties of or the prosecution of the AI system, or is it just by extension another instance of vicarious liability? Now, further, upon that topic, and that is my argument as to whether we should grant AI a juristic entity or not, because that is it that the AI will not be able to collect damages. The creator or the programmer will be able to, however. So in that case, we need to uh, discuss very well, and we need to frame policies with a lot of with the utmost amount of care to ensure that the wrong steps or the wrong decisions are not made. Thank you.
Uh,
All right. Yeah, please, Samar, go ahead if you have anything to say.
okay. So adding to the point of Nridit, so what if AI, who has given a certain music composition, he created a new composition. Now, if we give in a juristic entity, so now if he has created something, a new music, or rather a painting, right? Now the IP issues also can be considered, because now the first owner rights of the AI. So can we give these rights to AI in future or not? This should also be actually that can be issued in various different industries as well. So to what extent we have to actually look at the free will of the AI, or is that particular entity is using its own brain or not? Because even if the programmer has given a certain commands in the system that you have to like draw, like he has given him two pictures and give a command to draw by interpreting those two pictures and make a third picture. Now that third picture has been created, but the first two command has been given by the programmer. But a third picture, which has come out as a result of first two pictures, is an interpretation of the AI. Therefore, apart from the liability in the criminal jurisdiction, there is other liability in there's another case where how you are giving is the AI is essential to be given the IP rights or the other rights associated in different fields of law. So that can also be considered, like that should be considered by the people if they are making a future laws relation to this, and free will should be considered.
All right. If anybody has anything else to add, okay. So what Bhav said, I think, is very interesting. So when like if you consider, I think I joined the paper summer, but yeah, but I think if but the president is not here and we have kind of an informal discussion. So yeah, so I think I tend to refer with summer is where he says that, when two pictures are given to provided to an AI, and then the AI interprets it, to make a third picture. So I think in this case, the two pictures that were given by the programmer to the machine, or the or the artificially intelligent person, was could can be considered data. So I think, it's still that we have to give data to the to come out with the outcome. So yeah. Okay. Next, Mr. Prakash,
Yes.
instead.
So if I may, I have got a question.
Sure, Nirupal.
Yes. So, with reference to what the picture, the instance for the pictures that was given, two pictures are there, and AI interprets a third picture from the two of those. Now, I think it is based upon the principles of deep learning. So, the basic principles of and I'm not sure about this, and I'm really asking this rather. Doesn't the basic principle for deep learning require an algorithm, and that algorithm is an algorithm that is created by the developer or the programmer? So basically, that is his liability his or her liability at the end of the day, isn't it?
Exactly. That was my point,
Yeah.
actually. So, okay, all right. So, Mr. I think we'll come back to a question, Radpal. If anybody can answer it in their speeches, it would be great. So, Mr. Prakhar Prakash, you can speak next, please.
Thanks, Kshitij. Um, as far as a legal and juristic entity is concerned, I would like to view it with two perspectives. One, comparing with the other entities which are granted the legal entity or juristic entity, and comparing it with entities which was claimed to be which was asked to be granted, but the court declined it to grant the entity. So, in the first category, we can look into the matter of all the corporates where the companies are recognized as legal entity. However, there is always few people behind that who takes the decision. Those are human beings. Those are the members, and whenever it is required, the judiciary is free to pierce the corporate wheel and to see what is going on inside. Um in the case of artificial intelligence, it is more like it behaves more like a human being, unlike the company, which is controlled by human. AI behaves like a human being, and they move cars, they move things, they press triggers of autonomous weapons. They listen to our private personal conversations. And as Sama mentioned, they can create, buy, sell IPRs. So they are doing all these things that a human being is doing. So it is far different from companies. Moreover, as we have been discussing, suppose if a self-driving car hits a person or damages a property, and as a defendant, when the compensation is claimed, what property does it have from which it will pay the amount? Kashvi has already mentioned that it may be a pool of investments which can be collected, so that the burden doesn't lie on a single person who has created that algorithm, which may ultimately facilitate the production of AI systems. This can be a way, but then but then how can we punish the AI system? It has no emotions. Can we really jail them? Can we just keep them discharged for long, and that can be considered as a punishment? Or just disconnecting it or deleting the AI, that will be considered as a punishment. Moreover, as far as our IPC is concerned, there is a very minute difference between section 299 and 300 of IPC, culpable homicide and murder. There are also general exceptions. So where will the liability of this AI system fall, or will we need to create a completely new judicial setup for this? So all these are concerns regarding AI being treated as a human being. Also, another issue will come to the picture, that is the rights of the robots. So will we be punished? Will the human be punished if we don't connect the robot to a charging system, or we don't switch it on? So these can be these issues. Coming to the second aspect, comparing it with the entities which have not be, which seem similar to human but have not been granted the legal entity. For example, chimpanzees. Uh, there was a case in New York where the rights for chimpanzees was asked to be granted, but then uh, there were two considerations on which it was rejected by the court. They are chimpanzees are not capable of bearing legal responsibilities, and the other is they are not capable of performing obligation. So these two conditions are most very important to consider a being as a human being. And similar will be the case with AI. Also, AI, how can we compel the AI to comply with certain rules? And what if it does not follow it? Who will be liable? For And also, animals are more like humans. like they have emotions, they have conscience, they feel pain, joy, sorrow, everything. But that is not the case with AI. So if we are rejecting a animal from being a legal entity, can we consider AI being a legal entity? Because however, there may be positive there may be positives as well in granting them a legal entity. Like if some error happens with a robot or maybe an AI system, the person who created it won't be held liable, as the case with the companies, where the concept of limited liability helped a lot uh, in bringing people more into this structure where people are not completely liable. They have the limited liability, and so this might increase the interest and investment of people towards AI. However, the issue this is the issue of debate, that where will this contractual and tortious liability lie? Because already in US, very many states have already uh, passed legislation for treating self-driving cars as traditional human drivers and hold them accountable. But who will actually be accountable? That is the main issue. Thank you.
Well, that was very interesting, Mr. Khar. So I think if any has any point of information, or any Mr. Bharat, that please. All right.
If I
So
may.
thank you for bringing. Yes, yes. Please go ahead. Please go ahead. Of course.
Okay, so that case is like Naruto case, where the chimpanzee has taken the photograph from a photographer's camera. So the flaw that which I found in the current existing laws is that all the laws, if you see any of the laws, the UN, United Nations, or the IP laws, they are more humanic centered. Like they were revolved around the human, right? So therefore, in that case, it has been stated that it cannot give a, a animal a right under the IPR regime. So therefore, we need to consider in a similar circumstances that we are we are interpreting law in our language, like in a humanic form, where we interpret the laws which we understand. But at the same format, we are not able to understand what that animal or a machine is interpreting. I understand in case of machine, to an extent we are understanding that how is this system is working. But in case of animals, I think we are not able to understand whether we are able to understand that language or not. Therefore, we are not able to interpret that law in our significance. Therefore, in future, there we have to understand in terms of machine, because we are making the machines. So we are making that particular language in which we can to an extent relate to that particular language, because we are originate we are the originators of those language of the computer system later on, which has evolved to a AI system thereafter. So now this should be taken into consideration, that whether these laws which will make in future are vis-a-vis in with the human nature or not, like the laws which can coincide with the humans or not, or whether there should be a separate like regulation altogether which will strictly associated to the robots itself. So that can be seen in the future. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
All right. Thank you for that, Samar. And I think all laws are subject to improvement with passing time. So as the society evolves, the laws have to evolve too, which is very true. So moving ahead, I would request Mr. Sanad Arora to speak next, please.
I'm audible. Hello.
Yeah, I'm so sorry for that. Sanad, I think Mr. Prantik Mukherjee is next.
Oh no, no issues.
Yeah, thank you, Kshitij. So, when we talk about this, as like AI has a separate legal entity or a juristic entity. So, what we so it's calling them as a separate legal entity or a separate juristic entity is quite for me still quite a controversial issue. Since on in my opinion, the stage of AI development right we are right now, we have achieved artificial narrow intelligence and artificial general intelligence. So till now can't call them as we can't give them as a separate legal entity. But yeah, like Sophia the robot has gained this her citizenship as the first artificial intelligence humanoid robot. But like in the near decades, like after maybe around 10 to 20 years in the future, if we achieve artificial super intelligence, and so yeah, we can obviously think of giving a separate legal entity to the AIs too, and we might amend the citizenship and the citizenship policies and all. But for right now, we have what I think until a special circumstances arises, like if India tomorrow considers of giving AI legal entity status to its first humanoid robot, which will be sent to Mars. So I guess that won't be a problem, but I guess it should depend on circumstance basis. So so what we are talking right now is about even Miss Kashyap Shetty also talked about AI cars and all. So when we are if a AI enabled car those automatic cars have been enabled. So here we have to talk about the liability aspect too. If the car it has happened in many cases that the AI system of the car has failed and it has made with accident. And so in that case, whom should we make liable? Will it be will it be the company who has manufactured the car, or the driver, or the single individual person who has created an AI system? So these are some of the things which I guess should be needs to be addressed before giving a legal entity to artificial intelligence. And apart from that, in the future, like as I talked about, if the sentient AIs become a reality, so if sentient AIs become a reality, so yeah, if that's the case, we might give a different legal entity to those. But I guess it's still a very distant future, and I guess but there's a large possibility that that might become a reality, because like we have already witnessed that AIs have their own self-learning capabilities, and they are quite much doing well in that aspect. And if it even if you talk about this corporate entity and all, so I happen to have read a research paper by Prashant Mali, the very renowned he's a very renowned IT lawyer. So he stated that in future there might be that AIs might there no need to be of having a human as a CEO. Despite AIs might regulate the work and all. So in that case, there might be a new special terminology which might be coined, like which can be said as the 0% company. And I guess people are aware about the 1% company and all, but 0% company might become a reality, and in that aspect, that there might be amendments to the Companies Act 2000, Companies Act 2. So yeah, we are I guess we have to if you want to give us legal entity or legal status to AI, we have to I guess a single regulation might not suffice the need, but rather a lot of we have to amend a lot of different laws which are in present. Just I talked about the 0% company, then we have to amend the Companies Act. We have to amend the Motor Vehicles Act. Uh, we have to we might need to amend the PDP bill if it comes in force by this year or by next. So yeah, we have to consider a lot of things, and a lot of things have to change if AI needs to be given a legal status. So yeah, this is my point. Thank you so much.
If anybody has any point of information or anything to add to what Prantik just said. All right. That we have achieved AIGI, so that is artificial general intelligence. So if you could, I mean, I was not aware of that. So if you could, tell me, I mean, tell us about a few instances or a few companies that have been able to achieve that or something like that. Yeah, I think I'll move ahead. I'll leave my question for later on. So, Samar Rajput, you could speak next. So Samar has spoken, I think. Samar, have you spoken?
Yes,
Hello,
yes, yes,
am I
yes,
audible?
yes. I have spoken.
Yes. So, Mr. Sanad Arora can speak next then.
Informally speaking, a legal person is just a bearer of rights and duties. If any entity has rights and obligations in accordance with law, it obtains legal personhood. As a state is able to give rights and obligations to anyone and anything, it can happen at a click of a finger. The particular array of rights and duties that composes legal personhood varies with the nature of the entity. Usually, such legal entities have a system of rights and duties that has its own hierarchy and interconnections. For instance, corporations and human beings are legal persons that have different sets of rights and duties. There are no rules as to how many legal rights and duties a person or an entity can have. A legal personhood of a human being is usually recognized as something natural because the law is the development of the human mind. It is created with taking into consideration of human abilities, qualities, weaknesses, desires, and other characteristics. System of legal rules was developed during the centuries and was based on human distinctions such as feelings, intentions, and consciousness. AI has no critical human qualities for personhood. Among them are consciousness, feelings, intentionality, desires, interests, creativity, or something else. In case if AI shows a behavior that could be an evidence of such mentioned qualities, it just means that autonomous machine imitates human behavior. As some authors commented, simulation of a thing is not the thing itself. Similar arguments have prevailed amongst the legal and the academic community when it comes to uh, assigning legal personhood to AI. It is pertinent to note that any machine so developed is the reflection of the human intention, and directly flowing from it is the statement by lethal autonomous weapon systems. Their experts opine that humans and not computers and their algorithms should ultimately remain in control and thus be morally responsible. So, what can be essentially inference from this statement is that any AI which is so developed is nothing but a reflection of human intention. And any algorithm which is so embedded into the AI is because a human has embedded that algorithm into it. So if any decision taken by an AI leads to some detrimental outcome, the corporation behind it should be held accountable and should be liable to incur the liabilities which have arisen from such actions performed by the AI. In fact, even the moving forward, in fact, even the Turing test has no legal meaning, but it indicates that people tend to measure the personhood of a machine with the ability to be recognized by a person, which simply implies that people consider them as equal participant in social relations. Uh, I'd like to give an example over here of the Bollywood movie Her, where a man fell in love with an operating system and he respected her advice, felt her occasional disconnection like death of a real human being. So, what does it mean to give AI legal personhood? What could be the reason for the recognition of personhood when it comes to AI? As far as it comes to me, I'm unable to come up with any rational arguments, but the closest which I can think of is that anything which vaguely relates to human characteristics, give humans tend to associate some form of legal personhood to it. Um, it seems that there is no definite algorithm or guideline to detect what should be granted legal personhood and what should not. As previously noted by my delegates, also there have been many cases where legal personhood has been granted to inanimate projects like rivers. In fact, a case which happened in India in 2016, Salim versus the state of Uttarakhand, it assigned legal personhood to the rivers of Ganga and Yamuna. So, the position on whether legal personhood should be granted to AI is relatively unclear, and whether it is granted should be decided on a case by case basis. That's my position on the topic.
All right. Any point of information, or anybody has any questions for Sanad? All right, thank you. So moving ahead to Shruti Soumya, you can speak next, please.
Most of the points were already covered by my fellow mates, but I like to speak. To start with this topic, we need to understand who a person is in the eye of law. If one wants to enter into a contract or hold a property, they need to be a legal person. Now, some of the honorable high courts in India, in their exceptional judgments, have held that animal to have a personality and hence enjoy certain rights. Even a court in New Zealand declared Wangwai River, which is a home of Maori tribe, to be a legal person. The legal personality states which entity would count under the law and consist of entities such as corporations, religious deities, international organization, etc. With the development of artificial intelligence, the current legal sphere is being shaken to its core to facilitate the potential coming of a new type of legal entity, artificial intelligence. The definition of AI has been a topic of debate in past few years. AI refers to the following characteristic: the ability to communicate, knowledge of oneself, knowledge to outside world, the ability to achieve identified aims, and certain level of creativity. These characteristics and capabilities result from the code written by humans that programs or defines the action of AI. This becomes an important point to note. While we grant personhood to a body corporate in India, we are also settled with the fact that it cannot be a citizen under constitutional law of India or the Citizenship Act of 1955. The reason as to why a company cannot be treated as a citizen is that citizenship is granted only to a natural person and not to a juristic person. While most of the countries in the world continue to debate about granting the personhood status to an artificial intelligent machine, Saudi Arabia in 2017 has already done this to a humanoid robot, Sophia. All my fellow mates have already mentioned this thing. Now, in 2003, for the first time, an autonomous vehicle navigating the city lanes hits and kills a pedestrian. A lawsuit is sure to be followed. But which law would govern and establish the liability? Would the manufacturer of the self driven car be liable, or the autonomous car which made the decision on its own? It remains a mystery. The following scenario is becoming one of the most significant questions as we delve into the future of AI. The artificial intelligence which directed the action of the machine that caused the damage but lacks personhood status, or human being who lacks knowledge to know the machine performed. Consider the level of self awareness, autonomy, and self determination. May seek an analogy between robots and an animal. But what makes people eager to provide a legal protection to animal is not just the intelligence some of them display, but also their capacity to feel the pain, joy, or attachment which AI lacks. Consequently, what distinguishes human being in their capacity is understanding the rule governing the society, as well as the intention to comply with those rules, along with the ability to feel the emotions. The juristic personality for AI hold a lot of ambiguity, and it's next to impossible to get on a point whether or not to compare AI with that of a human to give them a personhood status or not. But the least we can do is first we need to do is a proper analysis of the functioning of AI to analyze its positive and the negative aspect, the negative effect it might have on the society, and consequently to form a proper framework and regulations. Thank you.
All right. Anybody has any point of information or anything to add to? Okay, fine. So, Mr. Tang Nega, you can speak next, please. Thanks. The president is not present, and I think Abhivardhan is also not present. Let's wait if Abhivardhan responds. If he responds, then fine. Is
Thank you, Kshitij. Am I audible to all the delegates? Hello, Kshitij, am I audible? Yes. Yes. So, let me have a reminder because I had some severe network issues and then certain issues. But anyways, so hmm, considering the current situation, we will discuss the last sub agenda after the recess, and the recess will last until 2 p.m. 10 minutes IST. Therefore, or I would believe that since we give a little bit longer breaks, it's fine. Uh, Let me see how the report is going. So I see some okay contributors are writing. Wonderful. So what do you think? You need some time? Would you like to come back at 2:20 members? What do you think? 2:20 works? Yeah. Okay. You're voting also. Okay. Okay, so let's vote. Let's vote. 1 minute. Let's vote. Because we need to stop the recording also. So, to end public meeting 5 and go to public meeting 6, we need to adjourn the session. The session will be held again at 2:20 p.m. Indian Standard Time, which is the beginning of public meeting 6 for AI General Assembly Session 1 2020. The executive board is present. The president has sent us a protocol message, a message in the protocol that due to network issues he is not attending. However, he is taking all the updates from the report. Therefore, it is signified from the power of the president to adjourn the session. Therefore, the session is adjourned. Once the recording stops, you still have to stay for 1 minute, and then I will discuss further things with you. Therefore, the session is adjourned, and the House will resume. Sorry, the Assembly will resume at 2:20 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Thank you. Please stay.